The agenda for today is to receive a presentation regarding nitrates in groundwater aquifers. This is part 2 of a series of staff presentations. So we're going to start now and end shortly before Marine 5:30. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. And at which time then we will begin a community health board meeting. Welcome, Sheila. Thank you for being here.
Yes, good afternoon. And I'm Sheila Harms. I'm the water planner for Winona County. And this is part 2 of the presentation to the county board on nitrates in groundwater. And last month, Ross Dunn's, I guess I have to advance these.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Are we going to be discussing this afterwards, or are we going to have a discussion at the future? And was your presentation a whole half hour long? There's a lot in there.
Well, I think when I was practicing, it came to 30 minutes, give or take. But
So we should save our questions till the end.
it's up to this board.
What's the board think?
I'll try.
It's pertinent
So
either way.
we'll ask as we go along.
No,
Okay.
knowing we have a half hour,
No, we
Actually,
actually
we have
got a
an
whole
hour.
or an
hour.
hour, but a half hour of
Yep,
Yeah.
presentation.
presentation. We'll just have to kind of gauge the dialogue to make sure you can finish, Sheila.
Okay, sounds good. All right, last month, Ross Dunsmore provided an overview of the geologic setting for the county and how that impacts the drinking water quality for residents. And my presentation will include a brief summary of what was presented last month, so I just have 2 slides for that. And then I will cover the EPA petition and what is being done to address nitrates in groundwater before the petition occurred, and then some elements of the proposed work plan. Whoops. I guess I don't know how to work this. Okay. Okay, how do I make it? There it goes. All right, so the setting for Winona County for nitrates in drinking water, virtually all of our groundwater all of our drinking water comes from groundwater. And the drinking water standard for nitrates is 10 parts per million or 10 milligrams per liter. And anything above that, there will be impacts for pregnant women and infants. So it would causing or impacting babies with blue baby syndrome.
So
And-
I got a question.
Sure.
There's communities in the great state of Minnesota that don't use groundwater, they use surface water.
Right.
How many of I think St. Paul, Minneapolis?
I think you're right. Yes.
So, we got the mighty Mississippi, running out here. And that's, I think, what they take their water out of, right? Does anybody know?
Well, Winona, Winona County, virtually all of the county water comes from from the groundwater for the drinking water.
But
Yeah.
I'm just curious that
Yeah,
a big
some-
major metropolitan would take surface water. And I know there's other areas that use
Right.
surface water.
Right.
And if it's more economical, or if there's less treatment, or it's better. They had a thing at the state fair a couple of years ago where you got to sample about 5 different kinds of water and you voted which was best. That was kind of interesting.
Yes.
So, okay.
Yeah. Well,
You don't-
irregardless of where a community gets their water from, they still have to treat it to make it get to the drinking water standards for the consumers.
Right.
So
But
whether
have-
it's
but have
surface
we-
water or groundwater.
Have we tested the water right outside the door? Do we know if it's high in I don't know.
I haven't tested it. No.
Do you have testing capabilities?
I think the city of Winona probably does that.
Yes.
Well, but they don't use, I don't know if they test. Yeah, they
Yeah,
don't
they
use
use the
surface
drink,
water.
the groundwater. Yes.
Okay, well, someday somebody should test it and tell me what it,
Mhm.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And so as I noting in this slide, the highest contributor of nitrates to groundwater is commercial fertilizer. And but animal waste and failing septic systems also do contribute nitrates to groundwater, but still the main contributor is commercial fertilizer. And wanted to note that with our groundwater aquifers, if there are issues with nitrates and you need to drill deeper. That's a economic burden for that household as well as for small communities. So we just acknowledge that the deeper we have to go, the more it'll cost. Okay. All right, for Ross's presentation from last month, he summarized the geologic setting of the karst landscape and aquifer vulnerability. And basically, we learned that geology here in southeast Minnesota is complex and that there's a lot of, each county has a unique setting from the neighboring counties. And even within the county, there's a lot of variability. So you can't blanket the whole region with one statement and it be correct. So there will always be exceptions to general statements. For example, Ross last month stated that the well code prohibits drilling to the Prairie du Chien to drink for drinking water sources. But here in Winona County, parts of two townships, Saratoga and St. Charles, do have portions of those townships that it is permissible to drill to the Prairie du Chien to get water currently. And pre-code wells are not constructed to protect from contamination. So pre-code wells, they're usually drilled to the shallowest aquifer. They lack adequate casing and may not be grouted. So, and then the other point is that most of the wells in this county are pre-code wells. So a significant number of private wells are vulnerable and may not offer protection to the aquifers.
You and I have had conversations, a lot of same pages for many, many years. And I can't even count the the consistent conversations Sheila and I have had for almost a decade. I know one of them we had looked at a while back was, we talked about, Blue Baby syndrome, we talked about, some of these pre-code wells. I mean, this has been known, what, 50s, I think it was, right? And it was an issue back in the 50s. I mean, that's how we came up with Blue Baby syndrome, was this existed before commercial nitrogen even existed, before they even put it on. Commercial nitrogen really didn't kick in until about the 50s. So, the question I have is how do, this problem's been around for a long time. We're just trying to get it really detailed in as to where it is and what it is. Because there's been more well testing in the last 5 years than we've ever seen, So when we look at where we're going with these like pre-cold wells, most of these were never tested. We had no idea what they were. They were just put in the ground and the object was to get water. And it probably been an issue for many, many years. We're just finally realizing, hey, this issue is here now. Is that a kind of a somewhat of a fair, I don't want to throw it all into one box, but as we do more testing, we're finding more issues. I mean, that's really what this boils down to. Would you say that's fair?
Yes, but I would say that the Blue Baby syndrome, that didn't become evident until after commercial fertilizer was being widely used.
Yeah, it wasn't, but it wasn't 50 years later. It was shortly after that they began.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Blue Baby syndrome didn't come into play in 2000.
Right.
And we
Right.
started using commercial fertilizers in
Correct.
the 1950s. So we know that there's a contribution factor to that. There's undeniably, we know that everything that's out there has some sort of an issue. But it's just interesting to me to see the pre-cold wells. They were never looked at as to contamination. The idea was the cheapest way to get water.
Yep.
And
It
wasn't
was
necessarily the correct way to get water. And we know that these problems have existed since just kind of starting to figure out, they just never gave a whole lot of emphasis to it.
right. It was an economically viable option to drill
Correct.
to
Just
that
to
level.
find it.
Yes.
Chris?
I'm hoping that we can delay a bunch of this till the actual conversation part.
That's right. But I,
MPCA says that if it's under 3, 10 being safe drinker water, then that is possibly naturally occurring. But their general consensus that I've read is if you look at places where there is not agricultural activity, they do not have levels such as we see commonly here. So
What I'm alluding to is that these pre-code wells were basically just put in. I would just
yeah,
put a well in.
and that's all information that Ross gave us when you
Yeah.
were sick, when you were homesick. So
Right.
Right.
I do have a question. You put the second bullet in bold.
Right.
Is that your commentary or is that, you know,
Well,
number
I
exceed-
bolded
far
it because I
exceed-
thought it was important.
okay, but far exceed, I mean, so, but we don't have numbers, right?
we do have numbers.
Some, but
Ross
there's a
has
lot
some
of wells that
numbers.
haven't been determined that they're
Ross
older.
told us
Right.
what some of those numbers were.
Yeah.
last
Right.
time.
But I
He
mean,
did- And Ross did cover that at the,
Yeah.
right, but there's a lot of unknowns.
Yeah,
And to
just-
say far exceeds,
We know about 4,400 wells in the county well index. Now it's called the Minnesota Well Index. As far as new construction, we're right in the 1,900 range. So, and everything in the county well index is not a complete. So you can start kind of doing the math. It's probably 75, 25, somewhere in that
yeah,
range.
but when you say far exceed, that's an arbitrary and capricious term.
Yeah, 75 to 25 sounds pretty big to me.
Well, then I would put that in there versus far exceeds. I feel better with that.
The point to the Sheila was that we know there's a lot of pre-code wells,
Mhm.
and when they were put in,
right.
there was very little attention given as to, it was just to find water. And now you got a lot of private land people with wells that probably should have
Thank
never
you.
been put in the way they were put in.
Maybe it needs a better reason.
I think Heidi's doing it.
Okay, thank you, Heidi. All right, for the next slide. And another thing that Ross pointed out from the last presentation was that he had a list of the wells that are constructed to code. And of those, 0.3%, less than 0.3% of those wells that were constructed to code had issues with nitrates, which would lead us to believe that the well code for Winona County is being effective in providing drinking water that meets water quality standards.
So 0.3, not 30%, but 0.3.
Yeah.
0.3, less than 0.3,
Gotcha.
yes.
We had a chart with like 1,841 and 4 of them
Yeah.
exceeded.
Basically, when done correctly.
When done correctly, correct.
Done correctly, we don't really have any issues. And we have a lot of incorrect wells down.
Right. And then also, he referenced the data that was submitted with the EPA petition, which referenced the first round of the township testing program. And not that the data was presented was incorrect, it was correct, but it didn't parse out which wells were pre-code, which wells were post-code, and a geologic setting and aquifer that water was drawing from. So it lumped everything together and didn't help clarify where there were issues.
Exactly. I mean, you can use numbers to tell whatever story you want them to tell. Thank you for acknowledging that.
Yes. And next slide, please. And this is another slide that was not presented last month, but Ross put it together. And it is detailing where there are unknown water supplies. And this was derived by taking where known well locations are and then overlaying it with parcel information that had development of some sort or another. So maybe that development is just a warehouse or a storage unit and has no well data. But if it does, we would need to know where those wells are located. There are 610 lavender dots on this map.
They don't.
And so those are places where there's some kind of development. We know no information about a well, but if there should be a well, we should need to know about it in case there was a chemical spill or something like that. These locations would be important because an abandoned well, for example, is a conduit to that aquifer and provides a pathway to for contaminants.
So why are there no little purple things in what I refer to as the toe of the,
Those are the unknown water supplies. There may be a water supply
but you
there.
don't have any down in the southeast?
Yeah.
They are, but there's nothing on the southeast corner.
Nope.
No.
This is an incomplete assessment. It's something that we had started
Oh,
to
okay,
do.
okay. So-
And we started in the lighter parts of the township because there's more well construction in the eastern part of the county. We needed to update our well data before we kind of finish that assessment. So
Okay.
it is only partial data.
Well, these are known unknowns.
Yeah, exactly.
No, no, no.
We,
It looks like my neighborhood's okay though, because there's no purple circles there.
What you told us is that there are between 8,000 and 9,000 wells. That's your guess. You know where
In that
about
area.
4,800 of them are. That leaves 3,200 to 4,200 that we might find, but that's a pretty high number,
It's-
bigger than 610.
Yeah, it's very speculative,
Yeah.
and we just wanted to stress that the numbers are very soft.
Best that you can. do.
And just the biggest issue is here, we started this assessment as far as spill response. What we were finding is that we were scrambling during different releases, rollovers, things of that nature, and we just didn't have the data, so we started to do some preventative response work. So this predates even this latest EPA issue.
Yep, okay, thanks.
I might add, Ross does this in his spare time, and he doesn't have a whole lot of that. Okay, next slide.
Maybe you should put incomplete on that chart.
And I will briefly summarize the Southeast Minnesota petition. And next slide. All right, this is the timeline. Last year in April, 11 environmental organizations petitioned the EPA to declare an imminent threat to public health in Southeast Minnesota, and it named 8 counties, and to exercise its authority under the Safe Drinking Water Act. I might add that this petition stated or named 3 state agencies, the Minnesota Department of Health, Department of Ag, and the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. And so those are the ones that are identified in the petition, and those are the entities that were addressed in the petition from the the response letter from the EPA. And in November, after review of that petition, the EPA issued a letter to those 3 state agencies outlining the required actions that they expected them to complete for the 8 Southeast Minnesota counties, including Winona. And so those counties are Dodge, Fillmore, Goodhue, Houston, Mower, Olmsted, Wabasha, and Winona. And so those 3 state agencies collaboratively worked together and submitted a response letter in December, and that was followed by the work plan, the proposed detailed work plan in January. The EPA letter, they specifically outlined these actions: develop a coordinated plan for addressing the nitrate issue, identifying private wells, conduct education and outreach for well owners, create and implement a plan to test drinking water, provide alternative water for affected households, maintain and publish records of the scope and severity of the nitrate issue, and communicate their progress to the EPA quarterly. And next slide. And this is just a brief snapshot of the work plan that was submitted by those agencies to the EPA. There are 3 phases. Phase 1 are the immediate actions to get the press out about there's an issue of nitrates being in our groundwater, and also to provide a provisional water resource or alternative water resource for vulnerable populations. Phase 2 will be starting in July, and those are directed more towards efforts to make sure that the water coming out of your tap is meeting drinking water standards. So that involves identifying the impacted residences, that's well inventory, conducting additional education and outreach, testing the private well water, mitigation to include RO systems and or constructing new wells, and providing a public record of work. And this would be interface that the public can tap into to find out what's going on in my neighborhood regarding water quality. Phase 3 is more long-term strategies, and these strategies are they're long-term, ongoing, and they're expansions of things that are already going on. And the objective for Phase 3 is to reduce nitrogen loss or nitrogen leaching to the aquifers. So Phase 2, addressing water coming out of your tap, that it meets drinking water standards. Phase 3, addressing nitrates that are going to the aquifer. And next slide. And so I just wanted to touch base on what was happening the day before the petition was submitted. It's not like this caught everybody by surprise. Next slide. So there are three, as mentioned, three entities that were identified in the petition that are actively working to respond to the petition request. And just to review, MPCA, Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, their main thing is to evaluate the water quality for water in the state. So they measure, they do assessments, and they determine if water meets drinking water standards or other designated uses. And they also are in charge of feedlot and manure management. Minnesota Department of Ag, they address pesticide and fertilizer management, and they also work on measures for pesticide and chemical use and how it affects surface water and groundwater. Department of Health, they assess drinking water sources and regulate well drilling and develop health risk guidance. And so there are other entities in the state that also deal with water, but these were the three that were named, and all three of these touch in one way or another nitrates and groundwater. And next slide, please. And I'll start off with what Department of Ag is doing. The nitrogen fertilizer management plan, since MDA is in charge of, they have statutory authority over pesticide or fertilizer use, and they are the lead agency for the regulation of that fertilizer, development and promotion, and evaluation of best management practices with ag chemicals. They worked to develop this nitrogen fertilizer management plan. This was first developed in 1990, and there was an update completed in 2015 based on new scientific information about vulnerability of groundwater. This plan is considered the blueprint to minimize groundwater impacts from use of commercial fertilizer. And so guidance from this plan led to the township testing program, which tested townships that had a high percentage of row crops. So in Winona County, 13 townships were selected for the township testing program. And also, and this led to information on areas that have high nitrates throughout southeast Minnesota. And it was an opportunity to engage the local community in development of, and just to understand what is going on. And so that township testing program and other things led to the groundwater protection rule. And next slide, please. And I might add, in Winona County, the township testing started in 2016, and the second round was done in 2017. And during that second round, Department of Ag removed the wells that had potential contaminant sources from sources other than commercial fertilizer, like they were close to a feedlot, or maybe that well was compromised and close to a septic system. So there were various reasons that there were a number of wells or data sets that were pulled out. And the groundwater protection rule was adopted in 2019. And it applies to the use of nitrogen fertilizer with focus to protect groundwater in vulnerable areas. There are two parts to the groundwater protection rule. Part one applies to restrictions on application of fertilizer application in the fall and on frozen ground. So that's part one. Part two is a little bit more complicated. It applies to vulnerable areas for the drinking water supply management areas. So these are the community wells. So if the nitrates in a community well reach a certain level, then certain parts of part two kick in. So this is complicated, but so if a well reaches 8 parts per million and is starting to trend upwards in a community well, then part two kicks in and that community is elevated to level 2. So level 2 of part 2. So that's why it's confusing. But anyway, in Winona County, we have 2 DWISMAs that have reached level 2 of part 2 of the groundwater protection rule. And those are Utica and Altura. So when that happened, the Department of Ag worked to convene forming local advisory teams. These local advisory teams consist of the farmers or the operators of ag land within that drinking water supply management area, and as well as their crop advisors. And the task for these local advisory teams under direction of Part 2 is to develop a list of BMPs or best management practices that will be implemented after the plan or the best management practice list is approved. And so that's where we are at right now. In Altura, the best management practice list is nearly complete. You know, the farmers and the crop advisors have done their part. Now we are waiting for the Department of Ag to finish their modeling work. And their modeling work is using the practices that were devised, or the list of practices. And the modeling work will be able to tell us, once these practices are implemented, how many years will it take to see the effect of those current practices in that well? And so that might be 20 years, it might be longer than that. But in the interim, until we get to that point, the agricultural land within that drinking water supply management area, a certain percentage of those practices need to be implemented in those fields. And they need to be proven that they're done in the next 3 growing seasons. And if they aren't, then there's other things that kick in for part 2. But this is a list that the growers have already decided that, hey, we can do these. This is our list.
You have that list in here somewhere?
No, I do
didn't
not.
see it.
That is not publicly available.
Okay.
It's something that the local advisory team developed. And until the MDA comes up with their part of the list and the modeling, then it will go to the Department of Ag Commissioner for his stamp of approval. Then it will become more public. But that's where they are at right now. So we're just waiting for the MDA to finish their piece. And the modeling work included, giving you just a little bit of background, they had done sampling from the wells, and they are having a very detailed analysis of that water to determine the age of that water, what percentage is what age and what percentage is that age. And so to kind of parse out, you know, what the time of travel is from those ag fields to the well. And then in Utica, the community of Utica is at a point where they need to drill a new well. So their local advisory team is on pause until that new well is drilled, and until after that well is drilled, the new drinking water supply management area boundary is defined. And the reason why it's on pause is that that new DUISMA boundary might be larger and it might be smaller. And depending on the size, that impacts which farmers will be asked to be on the local advisory team.
How would it change? What's the factor that changes that?
Well, if it gets larger, then we need to add more, invite more farmers to be a part of this.
Who determines if it gets larger?
Department of Health.
By testing the current well water?
No, they use, they do an assessment and evaluate, okay, this is our new well, and what is the time of travel for potential contaminants from the surface? How long will it reach? And then how far? They're looking at a 10-year time of travel. And so it may increase the size of that WISMA, so it would potentially increase the number of farmers that are invited to participate. And we want everybody who's potentially affected by this to be participating.
Remember when we went to that training that was out at the highway shop? You were at that training.
Mhm.
They had on the quiz, there was
Oh,
the deeper
yes.
the well, the deeper the aquifer, the smaller, because it's so much deeper. It takes the water so much longer to get down there, right?
What's the timeline for Utica? Because I haven't heard recently.
Well, when they develop the DUISMAs, it's a 10-year time of travel.
I mean, when they're going to drill their new well. Do they do it
Oh,
on the,
I have not heard lately. I don't know, Ross, have you heard at all?
haven't heard anything for a long time.
I thought it was after the-
We were out with the city of Altura earlier this year when they sealed Altura number 3, and he was indicating that they're hoping to get it drilled yet this year.
In Utica
Oh,
this year.
The Utica and Altura share. but-
Yeah, the Sharon operator, Dan Horvat is their
Wayne-
operator.
Wayne
Oh.
Getz used to do both
Oh,
Altura
the
and
manager.
Utica. When Wayne retired, then Dan took over. I had actually hired Dan when I was the mayor, and then
Okay,
when Wayne finally fully, then Utica took him on too.
okay, gotcha. All right, this year, hopefully.
Yeah.
Sheila,
Okay.
just a time check, and this is actually for the board as well. We're a half hour into it already. We're halfway through our
Okay.
1 hour.
We're
So-
about
So this is also-
almost halfway through the slides.
Good.
Right.
Excellent, though. Excellent. Okay.
One quick note, Sheila, it was really, so when they capped off the well in Altura, this just recently, they shoved the camera down. And they went down and they went down and they went down. And what they realized is that there were spots that were dumping into other spots. And this is much more complex than, hey, let's just go blame some people at the top side. We've got water moving like we don't even understand. And that was what I found interesting. I had actually found a well in Altura and we had it capped, got a grant a number of years back. And unbelievably, it was this far under the surface, right in an alley that nobody even knew about. So I mean, these things exist and they're out there and there's that, we definitely need to do something, but we got to be careful as to how we start pointing fingers because there's some complexity to these things.
And next slide, please. And the Department of Ag is also offering opportunities for farmers to help fine tune their nitrogen management. And it is recognized that each farmer and the land that they farm is different from the next. And so these programs can help tailor the nitrogen application management to the farmer's operation and location. So MDA offers the Nutrient Management Initiative and then also the Southeast BMP program. And this one prioritizes the DWISMAs and the townships that have high number of wells that have high nitrates. And also, and this I think is really good, the U of M is involved with this, but there are nitrogen rate and timing research trials that have been available for farmers in Southeast Minnesota. Since 2015, there have been 32 different research trials, and these trials hone in on application rate and timing, and that these are specific to Southeast Minnesota. So, and this information or the data from these research trials are provided to the U of M and help to inform the nitrogen rate recommendations. And next slide. And another program that I think is very important that I need to highlight is Minnesota's Ag Water Quality Certification Program. This is a voluntary and free program for farmers to participate in, and it encourages adoption of practices that protect water quality. In order to get certified in this program, a farmer will need to have a whole farm assessment done to include a water risk evaluation for each of the crops, for each of the fields that he operates. And and this has worked out really well. The Whitewater Watershed was one of 4 pilots when this started in 2013. And in Winona County had its first certified farmer in 2014. So this program is 10 years old. Certified farmers, once they sign up and start the certification process, if there are any practices that need to be done, they will, if they want to get certified, they will do so. And one interesting stat that I found is that on average, the certified farmers, once they start the program, they can earn a 45% reduced nitrogen loss through the nutrient management, cover crops, and crop rotation practices that are promoted through the Ag Certainty Program. And then there was one other stat that one other metric that I didn't include on this slide because it wasn't particular to nitrates in groundwater. But conservation tillage practices that are promoted on the certified farms have retained an estimated 142,000 tons of soil per year on ag fields that might have otherwise been lost if they were not certified. So I thought that was interesting. And then also certified farmers in this program on average are more profitable than those that are not certified. Minnesota's state farm business management program has been evaluating the Ag Certainty Program since 2019. And they found on average between 2019 and 2022, I haven't seen the report yet coming out this month, farmers that were certified had a net income 23% greater than non-certified farms. And other key metrics were evaluated, such as debt to asset ratios and debt coverage ratios, and those also were better with the certified farms than non-certified farms.
And isn't this a program that former County Commissioner, State Representative Steve Jacob is a certified farm, and he's really pushing to increase
Yes.
this and has a bill to increase the
Yeah.
financial incentive.
The idea right now, and this is amazing, it's not getting support. We've got $700 and some million to build a Taj Mahal, but we can't get a couple million to back this $5 credit up. That's what he's proposing, is that any landowner that certifies their ground gets a $5 an acre tax credit. It blows me away. We've got all this concern about out here, but we can't make that happen. And this goes right into what I've said for years, being in this ag sector, directly saying education over regulation. This is a phenomenal way to get farmers to move in the right direction. Why he can't get support for that bill is, I just can't figure it out.
It's too many metropolitan.
Yeah.
That was money for infrastructure.
Yeah. So to date, there are almost 1,500 farmers that are certified in this program. And
Minnesota. This is
in
a
Minnesota
program.
wide,
Gotcha.
in southeast Minnesota, in the 11 county area, it's 400 farmers that are certified.
Another quick 10 seconds is, well, this is huge. This is what it boils down to. This is how we're going to get people to change before regulation. I mean, this is massive. This is what the nuts and bolts of this whole thing is. If the other incentive to this is that if you're signed up for this program, you actually, because the number one thing here that farmers are looking at, why changes aren't made, is the financial impact. We're on a fast track to large corporate ag if we drive out all our local farmers because they can't meet standards and the economic burdens that are put on them. That is going to be the number one way to get us there. So my thing is this also allows them that says, hey, my land, like Sheila said it best, my land can produce more than this guy's land. We can't put it all in one box and say farm this way. They'd write one book and everybody'd retire. It doesn't work. If you're in this program, there's some leeway that you can prove that, hey, I have a production average that requires more than what the state or what, they're saying we can do, and allows them to continue some sort of operational goals that allow them to stay profitable, and they can prove that they might need some additional fertilizer and stuff. So this is a wonderful system to obtain what it is that we want and help educate the farms. So this is spot on. If we can just do more.
And this is what I wanted to share with you the other day, but,
Yeah.
and this is that best farm business management report. And, and recently, and I can't remember what month it was, this program reached its 1 million acre milestone throughout the state. And Winona County, we're at 32 certified producers and over 23,000 acres. And the Farm Business Management Report, this is a quote from them. This continues to indicate that producers who are able to obtain water quality certification have a management style that enhances profitability. And next slide. So moving from the MDA, the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, their role in this is with feedlots. And in 1974, the EPA delegated the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, NPDES, permitting system to MPCA. And MPCA, in turn, delegated certain responsibilities to Winona County. Another thing that MPCA does is evaluating water quality in the state. And all watersheds in the state are on a 10-year cycle that the MPCA does, 2 years of intensive monitoring followed by assessment, and then evaluating whether or not that water body meets designated uses. I just want to share one recent success in the latest update to that watershed evaluation. Beaver Creek, MPCA is proposing to the EPA that it be removed from the impaired waters list. And this is in direct relation to improvements made on the land to reduce erosion so that it improves habitat for the macroinvertebrate or the bugs that are living in the water.
In Houston County, Beaver State Park?
No, it's in
Same.
Beaver Creek, subwatershed, just going east of,
Oh, it's not Beaver Creek down in Beaver State Park in
no,
Houston?
okay,
Okay,
no, further north.
all right.
Okay, next slide.
A lot of Beaver
Yes.
Creek.
There's a Beaver Creek in Olmsted County.
Yeah.
There's a-
Yep. And Department of Health, they're responsible for the wells. So they developed the well code in 1974, which is the statewide regulation of wells. And then in 1989, we had the Minnesota Groundwater Protection Act, which regulates well construction. And in Minnesota, all wells must be sealed by contractors that are certified by the Department of Health. And a property owner may construct their own well as long as they meet state well code requirements.
Now, is that the new way, the better way, instead of all these not so good ways that are causing all these issues? Throw it in the ground and.
As long as it meets well code. And I just want to highlight the Tap In initiative, which is one of the programs that MDH had. And this is something that we did before the petition. And this was a pilot project. And Winona County was one of 6 counties in southeast Minnesota to participate. Olmsted County was the lead on this and wrote the proposal for the grant. And this provided free well testing to vulnerable people. So we had connections with WIC to provide test kits to people who were concerned about their water quality if they were not on city water. And also we had expanded education and outreach videos, which was the Tap In initiative. And then also mitigation. In Winona County, we were able to help cost share 1 new well as well as 4 RO systems. So this was a pilot project. It was just kind of testing the waters to see how we can move forward with helping people get drinking water out of their tap at meeting water quality standards. Any questions on this one? Okay, next slide. And so now I'm going to cover some of the work plan elements that were submitted to the EPA. Next slide. So as I had in the earlier slide, the 3 phases. Phase 1 of the work plan is happening now through June. And the lead for this is the Department of Health. And they're focused on education and outreach, which includes, and their philosophy is we're not going to just focus on just nitrates, even though that was what the EPA designation was for, was nitrates in groundwater. Department of Health decided that as long as we're doing outreach and conducting this massive outreach campaign to the public, we're going to let them know about the 4 other contaminants. There are also issues with groundwater and drinking water in southeast Minnesota. And I figured it just made sense. And the idea was they didn't want somebody who had a private well get their water tested for nitrates only, and it was okay, and then didn't want to give them a false sense of security, thinking that, oh, it's okay, but there might have been a manganese issue or something else. And so they wanted to make sure that they addressed it, what they call the top 5. So that article is what was in the Winona Post, I think it was last week, just letting people know, education and outreach about what can be done to get your water tested. And please get your water tested if you have not done so in the past year. And also I can add, I do have an update for providing alternative water to vulnerable populations. At the time I put this PowerPoint together, I didn't know. But we had an update yesterday with Department of Health, and they are they almost have a contract sealed and done and delivered. Anticipate that'll be done by the end of this month with a vendor. And they are planning to, anybody who has a household with vulnerable populations, pregnant women or infants, that you would have accessibility to getting free water delivered to your home. You would have to sign up online. No local staff resources need to be done to help assist you with this. This would be all done online. People would sign up, and if needed, they would have to provide proof that they have their well water exceeds the drinking water standards, and the vendor will deliver it right to their doorstep. I don't know who the vendor is.
These kinds of
I
things.
don't know if it's bottled or big jugs. I don't know that part. And it might be based on the preference of the property owner. I don't know. But that's the update that I have for that. To be continued. It's a moving target and things are falling in place piece by piece. Okay. Next slide. And phase 2 of the work plan, this will be starting in July. Clean water funding is needed for identifying wells, as well as providing free private well testing. And so these are in part being determined by the legislature, and that'll depend on how much funding and how. But for right now, there is a small part. MDA had a small funding pot that was available. They will be using that to do outreach to those who participated in the township testing program and had high nitrates and or high tested for some pesticides. So they will be doing outreach to them for that small pot of funding and provide free water to them for that. And so that'll be in addition to the MDH money. And there will be also for identification of wells, MPCA has provided some funding for us to do well inventory for 2 townships, Norton and Utica. So that was funding that they had available to put towards WinLAC initiatives. And so there were other pots of money. And basically, when we were going through the watershed restoration and protection strategies, we identified 4 different areas where there might be some data gaps. And so MPCA provided some funding for that. So we do have a little piece of money for that. And that contract will be signed, if it's not already signed, by Wabasha SWCD to administer that grant, along with the other pieces of that program. And so, and then the other thing that is being worked on is the dashboard at the bottom of the bullet there. And the EPA had directed the state agencies to be able to provide some kind of format or way for the public just to check in and find out what's going on in my water, in my neighborhood with respect to drinking water quality, and are we making progress on the work plan. So they proposed doing some kind of dashboard format online. And I was told that, so people who are providing their information about their well will be included. However, the publicly accessible dashboard will not access personal information. It'll be somewhat aggregated data. So it might be by township, but it will not disclose personal information, but it will be available to the public. And so also we are looking at a couple of grants for mitigation for wells with nitrates that have over 10 milligrams per liter. And so those will be coming through the Olmsted SWCD through some grants.
Sheila, quick, another time check. We have about 8 minutes left.
Okay.
So you might want to figure out a point to end.
Okay, I will do that. Next slide, please. Thank you. And thank you for the check. Okay, so this is one of the grants. Department of Health, Phase 2, Safe Drinking Water Grant for Private Users. This is the one that we already had Part 1 of the grant, and we applied for it again and got it. So we have $100,000 coming. This will be expanded to 9 counties, so the money won't go as far. And it would include testing for the top 5 for contaminants. And that will be starting hopefully in May. And the education and outreach is already done. Next slide. And this is the one pot of money that we for sure have. Olmsted SWCD has already signed the contract with Department of Ag. This grant is for $400,000 for the 8-county area. And this will be available for well owners who have high nitrates or high pesticides. And full or partial funding depends on whether there's vulnerable people living in the household and what the nitrate levels are at. And that's all I can say for that. Otherwise, it's pretty straightforward.
And that's just reverse osmosis systems then for this.
And potentially new wells if that is what's necessary.
400,000 doesn't get you.
It won't,
too many
it won't.
wells.
So we're hoping it's all RO systems.
Gotcha.
Next slide, please. And Phase 3 of the work plan, as I said, is ongoing and long-term and addresses how nitrates are moving to the aquifers, trying to reduce that load. And most of these are things that are already going on, but just vamping it up to increase the capacity. One thing I want to note, task force to address nitrates. Emails are being sent out to recruit people to apply to be on the task force. And this will be starting in June. Deadline is May 10th. I don't have a website for it, but if you Google MPCA and nitrates in groundwater, it should get you right to the webpage and with an application to sign up. And they're looking for a wide group of people to be a part of this group.
I'm sorry, Sheila. So this is any member of the public, or is this meant for?
Yes, they want They want somebody to represent commissioners, staff. They want the groups that sign the petition. They want farmers, a wide group of people. And I know the policy committee members for the One Watershed, One Plans will be getting, if you have not already received it, from Shayna Keesley.
Can you share that with us?
You got it.
Yes,
You're on the distribution.
I know, but I didn't, did it come today?
maybe it was last Friday.
Don't remember seeing it. but
Can you
that's-
share with,
Okay.
share with all?
Sure,
of us
I
again?
can do that. Yep.
But you said
So
the deadline,
May 10th to apply, yes.
Yeah.
And they're looking for about 17 people to be on this, meeting an entire day, once a month, from June of this year till June of next year. And a lot of the pieces for this phase 3 will be worked out in that work group
17
Is
from
it-
Winona County,
Is it-
18th. It came on the.
from the entire southeast 8-county area.
8 counties.
Yes. So that's why they have the application process. Yeah, next slide. And MPCA, this is just to let you know that they will be redoing reissuing their permits for feedlots. They're coming up to some hard deadlines for the NPDES and state disposal system. And this timeline is not being affected by the EPA petition, but it gives a good opportunity to work in the initiatives from this work plan and addressing nitrates in groundwater. Next slide. And these are what will be included in the rulemaking process. Will include transfer of manure, improved record keeping, increasing manure setbacks, and making sure there's adequate manure storage. And next slide. And I just want to highlight that the Winona County SWCD has been in existence since 1938 and has always stepped forward to help out with any issues landowners might have for improving the landscape. And these are some of the things that they have help provide financial assistance and technical assistance for. And the county, of course, we have the septic system upgrades, well permitting, and manure management planning through our feedlot officer. And next slide.
And Sheila, we were the first SWCD in the state, correct?
Yes. And I just want to note that nitrates in groundwater has been a long-term problem, as Commissioner Elsing has pointed out. And this is not something that we can fix in a year. It's a long-term plan. And, but if anybody has any other questions, I am done.
if you had more answers, that would be beneficial.
That would be, yes, it would.
Lots of questions.
I always have more questions than answers.
Chris, Josh, did you? Go ahead, go.
We got 2 minutes.
Chris and Josh, go ahead.
Okay, so this goes back to Ross's presentation. He told us that we have about 1,900 wells, and that was since 89. Now, if someone wants to drill a well in Winona County, does Ross inspect it and give them the permit? Is that right? He's shaking his head, yes? So,
Correct.
and we,
Correct. We're a delegated program, so we perform the functions of well code enforcement in Winona County under an agreement with MDH,
and that's been since 89?
February of 1989.
And so if a well was drilled in 78 or something before the 89 program and before we took it over, it still had an inspection, right? It just,
No,
no,
there were 4 people in the state doing regulation. They were all in the metro, so
well, between 74 and 89. when
They-
the other line-
they expanded where they could. So but it was very difficult to get people outside the metro.
Okay.
They were addressing the worst of the worst situations, and during that process, they were pushing counties to take delegation of the well program. So we were southeast of Minnesota was a focus. So at one time, most of the counties in southeast Minnesota had delegation. Some have returned it. But there are still plenty of more sensitive areas that perform those functions that allow us to get out there more frequently.
So not every county has accepted delegation, but a lot.
Goodhue, Wabasha, Winona, Olmsted, Blue Earth, Wasikwa-Lesueur, I'm blanking on a few, but Dakota, Rice is not, Dodge doesn't, Steele doesn't, Mauer did, but they returned it. Freeborn doesn't.
Well, in 78, would it be on the well index at the state level or no?
It depends. Initially, the well contractors resisted turning in their well logs. So with the Groundwater Protection Act of 89, that's when they expanded staff and staffed regional inspectors in all the regional offices of MDH. And at that point, they realized that they wanted to get those records. So they started threatening them with withholding their license. So that's when we really got good compliance in turning in records.
How about Chris, Josh, and then maybe we'll wrap up for tonight.
Okay.
Go ahead, Josh. Chris, were you done?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Josh?
It just alludes to what I'm saying before. There was a lot of mismanagement for many, many, many years, and it's starting to get exposed. We're just finally getting on top of this issue going, hey, there was a lot of things that we know. Why didn't they want to turn in their reports? They knew what they were doing. I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but I mean, I'm only 47, but I've been around the block and heard enough stories over the years and lived on both sides of the state. And so at the end of the day, it's, this is where we're going back and we're kind of dealing with the sins maybe of our forefathers and what's happened. And we're learning that, but we're quick to do is point fingers. Well, it's your fault, your fault, your fault. You're going to pay the price at all costs. And we don't care how you get there. Have a good life. We want clean water. And what we're realizing, and the proof is in the pudding, when done correctly, 0.3%. 0.3%. Show me anything else that's that efficient when done correctly. So at the end of the day, yes, we can still do it better. Yes, we know we need to clean some things up. Yes, we know through education, we can do a better job in agriculture. But to just sit around and blindly start bang, 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 there's a lot of things that are just, we haven't even gone into municipalities and wastewater storage. And it's ironic a little bit where we're finding some of these things. And so there's so many factors that contribute to this. So I just, again, caution and say the agronomic sector is a global economy. And if we begin to put economic burdens on them, that is the fast track to driving these people out of a willingness to participate. So again, thank you for all of your work. Thank you for your honesty and knowledge and the fact that we do know this is very, very complex and we need to be careful where we point fingers.
If you want additional time for questions, depending on if you have questions on the foundational public health funding, you will have plenty of time, depending on what kind of questions you have as far as convening Board of Health.
Okay.
So
So maybe we can continue in the next section.
correct.
That's a great idea.
Wonderful. Thank you.
All right. So thank you, Sheila, so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ross. So
Thank
I
you,
think we'll adjourn the committee to the board and should we just hop right in or do you guys need a break?
No,
I'm good.
Good.
So we'll begin
You
the,
need a break before the 6th.
the community health board.
Yep, we'll convene, call to order the Winona County Community Health Board. First item is approval of the meeting minutes from January 23.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Vagley, second by Commissioner Elton to approve the Community Health Board meeting minutes, January 2023. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, meeting minutes approved. Chairperson's report. We haven't had any major meetings. Public health, I'm glad Sheila seemed to fill in some of the blanks, what MDH is doing with the water, which is a good thing. So we'll move into the consent business is 4.1, approve or accept ARPA grant funding from Minnesota Department of Health to replace HB 301 analyzers for reading hemoglobin samples in WIC. Sounds like it's something that's doable. Ross, do you know, can you break that down in layman's terms? Blood samples?
Leftover money.
Doesn't sound like it.
Want to tap it once?
Tap the actual mic.
No, no.
Battery?
We want to switch the mic.
You got to get something with more efficient batteries. We do this more often than solar. Yeah, solar batteries.
Is this one
No.
So it must be,
Those batteries done too.
Why did they, somebody leave them on?
We have maybe Ross join us at the table and use one of those
Yeah, you
mics.
just, or speak loudly.
Just grab a
I
seat.
can,
There you go.
Yeah.
do you think that will? Okay.
There.
So what,
Just hit
Yeah.
So the state apparently had some additional leftover ARPA money.
Mhm.
They surveyed the WIC programs throughout the state and found that the equipment's aging. So they determined that they had enough funding to offer replacement units. So upgrade the equipment, it tests more quickly, and the supplies are actually cheaper to purchase. So it was efficient, more efficient all the way around. So they did offer to replace 3 units for us. Which will be more than enough. And Jessica Allred had indicated that everything, all the expenses are going to be able to be paid for out of, will either be covered by the ARPA funding or from the federal WIC funding. So there will be no cost to the county.
Are they gonna take the old units back and repurpose them?
That I don't have an answer
Okay,
for.
all right, or post them on Craigslist and see if somebody buys them.
I'll move to approve. I'm not going to repeat that. Item 4.1.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to approve the Minnesota Department of Health funding. Any further discussions? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, carried. And I'm serious, you know, old equipment, we don't need, the biggest thing is Winona County doesn't need to store it. It needs to be somehow,
Yeah, there may be a disposal cost, but again, it would be
Yeah.
it should be
Yeah.
coverable under WIC funding. So
yeah, we don't need to rent storage. for old
back in business.
All right, thank you. Item 5.1, receive, update, and provide direction on use of foundational public health responsibility funding. Now, there wasn't anything,
I had sent you a memo detailing the last time you met with this
and I'm sorry, when was that sent out?
about a month ago. Did it didn't get attached? Is it in the packet? Okay.
Oh, no.
My-
No, I guess I didn't realize that
Okay,
was,
well, I can give you kind of an update. Before Melanie left, she had talked with you, and the concerns that were conveyed to me was you were concerned about using it to add staff when you didn't know about how reliable the continued funding of this money would be. And the second item was the 75% new match to commit to using the money. What I was able to do through discussions with MDH is your environmental health program, all your environmental health programs have been moved out of CHS, but those are still public health functions. So by looking at the well program, the septic program, solid waste program, those programs are all named in Minnesota statutes 145A. So they all qualify as activities for the 75% match. So when you look at what funding those programs are receiving or what they're collecting in fees, that provides more than enough match to cover use of this new foundational public health money. So it's open to you if you want to use it. So what we did in taking into account what your concerns were is we put a placekeeper budget in where it covered doing contract work with maybe retirees. There's a lot of planning work. There's a lot of procedural work, that things that have never been written down that it's become pretty evident with the departures of the loss of staff. Those are all identified as foundational public health activities that the state wants us to do so that we have continuity, so that everybody, all the people throughout the state are able to receive the same level of services. So that's kind of the point behind the foundational public health activity funding. So we put a placekeeper budget in when the new Health and Human Services supervisor and director come on board. That will be able to be amended, and you would be able to start engaging in use of that money It will change the local public health annual report that is filed will have to be modified and start reporting activities within planning and environmental services where you've got environmental health programs being performed outside CHS, but it all qualifies as far as legitimate matches so that you're not going to have to come up with new funding to match the use of the I believe it's 204,000 that the legislature had approved as enhanced funding. The other part of the plan is that they hope that this new funding will just be rolled into the local public health grant. It will not be a separate pool in the future. The funding will also carry through for usage in 2025 because of the late rollout.
Okay, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Okay, so, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, pardon me,
ahead.
please, Marcia.
Commissioner Meyer.
Okay, so I get it, that we can use activities that we already do related to septic wells to count as the match. So we don't have to come up with additional cash for the match, we can just take the $200,000. But we have to figure out how to spend it. And then you have a set of bullet points in here, but we didn't have time to think about it in advance.
This is just kind of, I wanted to give you the opportunity to, if you had some, just revisit the issue if you want this to come back when the new Health and Human Services Supervisor, the new CHS Administrator comes in.
Catches me totally unprepared. I didn't realize that email tied into this. Ms. Holte.
That email was sent on March 8th, 2024 at 10 o'clock in the morning.
So can you resend it?
I mean,
So-
I found it.
Okay, all right. I guess I wasn't even looking for it because I guess I didn't realize it.
I mean, I'm with you, Marcia, I did it.
It was meant as information.
Okay, okay.
Um,
So, I mean, I don't know that I'm ready to say yes or no to any of this tonight. I mean, I appreciate the activities cover the match, but I don't know, you had ideas of how to spend the additional money?
Just hypothetical.
Okay.
Really, the grant application or the grant application work plan has not been approved by the state yet. So it's not like we can do anything.
So you don't need us to.
We don't need you to act today. And the plan was that we would be waiting for new leadership to come on board because their priorities may be different.
Right.
What I had to do is come up with a hypothetical work plan and budget. So we just prepared a kind of a placekeeper as some potentially viable options from what we could see from the guidance. And the state is bringing more and more information forward. They're kind of late to the party, their own party, and
I
we need
did
more
pull-
information.
I think this came through one of our SHAC meetings, the Foundational Public Health Responsibility. So I did pull that for discussion, but again, I need to see what you outlined and you're right, what the new department head will have ideas. So,
I just sent it back to everyone.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like kind of a no-brainer not to do it. We'll have
Right.
additional funds to use some pretty looks like things that have been needed for a while.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean,
so-
you're not committed to using all the money. So it's if you have the ability to use as much or none of the money as you
Table.
wish.
We
So
can table any more
what
discussion
I
to a
was thinking.
future meeting. What timeline?
Absolutely. This is just informational,
Okay,
not
not
asking
motion
for any
based.
action,
no.
no spending, just information.
okay. So the email you resent will outline some of what Ross is talking about.
There it
Okay,
is.
appreciate
Just
it.
popped it.
Okay, all right. Thank you. All right.
Thank you, Russ.
Any other questions?
Not about that. The time is 5:45 approximately.
Yeah, 5:44.
Should we
yeah.
give ourselves more time to finish the water discussion and then stop and give ourselves a break in between?
Sure. So I need a motion to adjourn the
Or
community.
we could go, or do you just want to keep going under, water falls under community health too, or
It does.
does that work?
Yeah, that works fine.
That way.
Any more health questions related to water?
Mine
Yes.
signing.
Oh,
Any other-
I'm still working on me.
Any other questions on the water issue?
Yeah.
Wayne?
Go ahead, Chris, and I'll,
Oh, no. So I'm not interested in pointing fingers either.
Thank you.
But what I want to talk about is Olmsted County has a lot more money than we do. We'd start with that. But they have done this fabulous voluntary soil health program. They used 5 million of their ARPA funds what I wanted to say is that I appreciate all the work that Soil and Water does. The state of Minnesota has its own nutrient reduction strategy. This is the page from their website. And they give a progress report on it. The most recent progress report is from 2020. The thing is, if you look at their goals for what kind of best practices they think need to be implemented across the state. In general, these bars are the best practices. The light blue is where they want to be, and the dark blue is where we actually are. And so I would like our staff to keep in mind that if there's grant work that, I think that a lot will come out of the legislature this year. I support improving the funding or helping with funding for voluntary implementation of best management practices for better supporting the soil and water, because that's really the main body that initiates a lot of that work and does those grants. That we allow time for our staff or figure out how our staff, I'm thinking particularly about our water planner, can really stay abreast of what funds come available, and you from the public health perspective, because there's a lot of legislation moving through in addition to what Representative Jacob has proposed, but that I see it as a goal, and I would hope that the whole board would support it as a goal, that our staff look for those kind of funds and really help to make that kind of work happen. That would be great, for the long-term health of our residents and for the agricultural sector. So that's really my thinking.
So, okay, so I've always advocated somebody wants to build a new house out in the country, we give them a feedlot that they have to operate. So in one of your things here, program options, expand haying and grazing acres. Well, for haying and grazing, we need livestock. We need ruminant livestock. I just got I got 9 goats from the neighbor. So they're grazing my little paddock as we speak. But you need grazing animals, you need ruminant animals. So
You need to ruminate whether
Yeah.
you graze them or whether you feed
feed
them.
them, hay, yeah.
And one of the
hay.
things that I've heard is to,
You gotta have animals.
well, we could grow hay and sell it. No, we can't. We can't grow hay and sell it like the Dakotas can. We just can't do it, guys. And so it's the misconception that somebody behind a desk understands something better than what people that are doing. Can we grow hay? Absolutely. But there's a market for it, and it's a very picky market. So we're going to have to keep animals on the landscape if we want to control some of these things. It's the fastest way to mitigate even nitrogen, So you look at any corn on alfalfa field, that application of nitrogen is virtually nothing in comparison to a corn on bean world. So you want the fastest way to cut out production synthetic nitrogen, just grow hay crop. You can literally pile that thing under, put a little bit of fertilizer, a little bit of manure on it, and you got 250 bushel corn.
So you need cows or horses.
But you
or
got to have
sheep
a market
yeah.
to produce that crop, or it's got to be subsidized in some aspect. So, we just having this broader mindset of what it takes to accomplish what we want, and not put it all in a box and think that the economics are going to follow the concept. They don't.
So one of the things that I found powerful, Commissioner Wright from Olmsted County, when he was talking to the legislators about this, he talked about how they have an incentive for growing oats. So the Farm Bill incentivizes basically 10 commodities,
Mhm.
and one of them is not oats, so you can't get crop insurance for that.
Not oats, it's
So
not
they
hay.
help folks to grow crops like oats. And then he talks about the measurement at 6 feet down of the nitrates in the soil and how those small grains. So their small grain program is something that tries to make up for that, which is lacking at the federal level. So I think there are some pretty innovative things, and I would love to see us expand the implementation of best management practices.
I've said for years that I would subsidize a third crop if we could, because it's what brings in the diversity, not only in nutrient management, but also in pesticides and herbicide usage. everything we're talking about here, I've made a career out of trying to reduce nitrogen, reduce all these things, but contrary to what I hear, people, the opinion they have of me. But that's why I've helped so many farms transition to organic. And we're seeing the conventional aspect take on more of these ideologies of that organic sector. So it is near and dear to my heart to reduce all this. But first of all, the economics have to be here. The issue when we subsidize, I was part of General Mills Heart Healthy. I was the one that got tasked to reduce nitrogen. It was a Walmart mandate to General Mills to cut nitrogen back. They realized 42% of the energy sector, petroleum sector, was driven by agriculture. 89% of that was synthetic fertilizers. So we were reduced, and Walmart figured out we can save this many billions of dollars if we have this substantial little, wasn't about, to me, it wasn't about, hey, we're looking for the environment. It was about, we can save money. And oh, by the way, so who did they go to first? Who are you familiar with? General Mills, right? And so General Mills was tasked first, and then it was Kellogg's and Post. And so when we got down to General Mills, guess who was calling us? So I literally was on their LeSueur farm, and we taught General Mills how to take oats, and I cut their nitrogen program by 56%. I doubled their beta glucans, which is where their heart healthy comes on the box. I was the individual partially behind that. And we showed them, and we increased test weight, and we increased oats. You know what stopped it? There's only so much demand for oats. And see, it's the hemp situation was the exact same thing. There's only so much demand. The consumer is only eating so much oats. So although it's great that we produce more oats, where do they go? Do we put them in a pile and burn them? Do we use them for fuel? What do we do with this? So that is the issue, because you can only produce so much of something before it's a waste. Nobody wants it. So the issue becomes, we go back to the economics. The concepts of producing things are great, but if the consumer is making a decision in the grocery store that offsets the need, who foots the bill? You see, it's a great concept, but the demand has to be there. And that is the part that's being missed throughout this whole alternative mindset into agriculture, that I could give you 20 years of examples, all the way up to the largest food company in the United States that I've directly been involved with to do exactly what we're talking about here, at the level of Walmart, which is the largest corporation, mandating the largest food corporation. And the guy sitting here was the one that was literally on their research farms doing it, telling you that we've done this, but the consumer demands it. And so it's great that these things exist, but until you have firsthand experience how to go back to the farmer and say, it's awesome that you can do this, but I'm sorry, you've got to literally give your oats away. You've got this great yield and you did it with virtually no nitrogen, but there's no money to be made because nobody wants it. And that is the issue. So this thing the scope of it, even Walmart and General Mills could not figure out how to sell more oats,
And you may be able, you might be able I guess the point being, there are parts of the economic situation and the farm ag sector that are free market. For the most part, it's not. All the producers that produce get crop insurance. And I don't disagree with that as a concept.
And that's a fairly new concept.
No, it's been around since the Dust Bowl.
Well,
the
the idea
subsidization,
that- no,
yes. Yeah, it's been
It's
around. It's
since
been
the
around
Dust
for a
Bowl.
long
The idea is
The
that we
level.
have to have a national food supply.
Right.
And so I 100% support subsidies, but I do believe that what we subsidize is exactly what we.
It's
get.
pigeonholed the farmers into a sector
That's
that's,
exactly
I
right.
agree 100%.
So it isn't, we're really not talking about a free market scenario. And
It's-
if
it
we
is
want something
free,
different, if we
but-
want to consider water and
Yeah.
conservation, then we need to incentivize.
But
those
ultimately,
things.
nobody's going to produce something the consumer doesn't want. That's really what it boiled down to. So at the end of the day, you can only make so many food sources out of an oat. There's only
And you
so
can
many
only
things that can
make
be
so many food sources out of corn.
correct. And
Yeah,
right
that's
now,
exactly right.
it's
But
easier to do it with corn.
Right, because it's one of the 10 commodities.
I believe that
Well,
if
do it
they
with
could
plastic
produce
bags.
more out of that, I believe they would.
So I don't
Been
think that
difficult.
really helps us with what we need to do in Winona County. And the idea that I
But
really would love to
it-
see us expand.
It does
pest
give us the
management
scope to
practices.
make sure that.
I
we
don't
achieve it.
think that it's a mystery that we don't know what we need to do. I think we do know what we need
Yeah.
to do. We just need to incentivize.
That's what and if we want to have a 5-minute break, we should probably
Yes.
end
Yeah,
in a
2
minute.
minutes. yeah.
So
Um,
Dwayne's got the floor.
I just want to ask, can we continue this conversation? Thank you so much for Ross. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
Sheila, but maybe at next month's committee of the board or et cetera, we can continue this. this because I love this conversation. And I think that the farther you get into it, the more you realize there actually is some shared common ground, et cetera. So I hope so we can continue it in the future. I don't know what that looks like. Maybe we can figure
I
that
did
out.
those,
But
yeah.
I'm really interested in information and education, but also action, like doing something with all people at the table.
I've tied up my ground in conservation programs for 10 years. We'll have to put a timeline.
It might be worth our while to wait until after the legislative session is out.
Well, if we aimed for the fourth meeting in May, that's when the session ends, right?
Then we'll have a better idea of what
What,
potentially
passed
made
and
it through.
What passed and what didn't
Yeah.
pass.
And I think that would, from a public
Probably
health
a fertilizer
perspective,
tax,
we'll
you know,
know if the
They just raised it.
did they?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So motion to adjourn our.
I'll
meeting.
move to June.
Second.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Vagley, second by Commissioner Elsing to adjourn. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Adjourn. All right,
So
5-minute break.
yep, 5-minute break.
Good evening.
Good evening.
The first order on the agenda is public comment. Is anyone here who would like to share thoughts, or is anyone online? When you come to the podium, please state your name and your address, please.
Hello again. I'm Caroline Van Shake and I live at 40002 Wolf Hill Drive, technically La Crescent, Southern Winona County. I just want to say two things. One is, Chris, I really applaud your request for staff time to look for every ounce of every penny that's available out there. And I want to add that it is not just money to make things better, it's actually staff to do it. And I say that from having worked for so many decades with SWCD and NRCS people. And so, because so many of them are doing way more than they can and should, and they're bogged down by bureaucracy. So when you keep fighting that fight, which is good, it's a plea from a non-agency person to include in their money searches to get staff to do this extra work. They don't need more work on the existing staff people. And then the other thing I wanted to say, and I'm sure my 2 minutes, okay, is just, this is just going to be my drum to beat until I don't know when. It is so easy to lose track of how our wells got and are contaminated with nitrates and everything else that travels with nitrogen in the soil and in the water. But at the end of the day, as Sheila said, most of our wells in the county are pre-code, and so they need fixing. And at the end of the day, all the studies at the U of M and anybody else are doing about nitrate rates is actually contributing to a historic, and now we are measuring it, Josh, you're right, we are now looking at it in a serious way, of contaminated wells that people are using. So whether it's an old problem or a new problem, it is our problem. And in Winona County, that is what we have to deal with here and in our neighboring counties. And so the fact that commercial fertilizer rates began being registered going up in 1989.
Really?
Utica's well nitrate contamination dot started going up in about 1991, and those numbers are still going up. That is our problem today.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Is there anyone else who would wish to share any thoughts with the county board, either in person or online? Anybody else? I'll ask 2 more times. Here or online that would like to share any thoughts with the county board? Anybody else here or online? And Maureen, do you think are we confident that the online, the folks that, okay,
Yep.
okay. All right,
Heidi's monitoring.
wonderful. All right, hearing none, we'll close the public comment. The next item on the agenda is to to approve the county board minutes from April 9th.
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion by Commissioner seconded by Commissioner Meyer. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Item 6, acknowledge receipt of approved committee minutes.
I will move for approval of the Parks and Environment Committee meeting.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Meyer, seconded by Commissioner Olson. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 5-0. Next item, consent comments and approval of agenda. Commissioner Elsing?
Nothing for me. I believe we had everything that I needed.
Okay, Commissioner Ward?
Just a announcement at the end, please.
Thank you. Commissioner Olson?
Nothing for me.
Commissioner Meyer?
Nothing, thank you.
Ms. Holte? Ms. Sonneman?
For me, either.
Okay, I'll have one quick comment at the end. All right, with that, we need to approve the agenda.
Move the agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Ward, seconded by Commissioner Elsing to approve the agenda as is. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Ms. Holte, can you read the consent comments into the record?
Absolutely. 8.1, approve recommendation to hire Health and Human Services Director. 8.2, approve County Board Chair recommendation for Human Rights Commission applicant. 8.3, accept ARPA grant funding from MDH to replace HB 301 analyzers for reading hemoglobin samples in WIC. 8.4, approve renewal of purchase of service and business associate agreements with Family and Children's Centers for supervised visitation services. 8.5, award bid for aggregate shouldering to Dunville Blacktop. 8.6, award bid for Passat 30 bridge replacement to Icon Constructors. 8.7, approve professional service agreement with WHKS for design work for Apple Blossom Park project. 8.8, approve use of reserve for 2024 budget expense. 8.9, approve resolution for donations received January 1, 2024 to March 31st, 2024. And 8.10, confirm payment of disbursements.
Thank you. Is there a motion to?
I move to approve the consent business as read.
Motion by Commissioner Meyer, seconded by Commissioner Olson to approve the consent items. Any discussion?
Just a comment. It's an exciting time in Winona County government. We're actually hiring major department heads. And so we've got a planning director. Now we're just approving a health and human service director. And I know you had interviews today. So with very positive, I think, very positive applicants and good things. So thank you.
To Ms. Holte. Thank you to Mr. Sensal and all the other staff that made that happen. All right, any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. That takes us to general business. Item 9.1, discuss, modify, approve, deny RAP Strategies proposal to provide referendum communication services.
Scroll ahead to 102 here, quick.
Mhm. Commissioner Meyer?
Okay, so I thought that we couldn't promote
Mm-hmm.
passage. No, we can't, but we can hire them to do communications.
Right, and
Although-
education.
Yeah, their document sounds kind of,
Well,
Promoting.
yeah, it does. Well, we get 72% passage of. blah,
well,
blah,
their
you know.
document, but not their
Strategy.
promotional materials to get them hired is more in the promotional.
Yeah,
type
it is.
thing,
It is definitely, yeah. Okay.
But as it says in the your agenda item, Ms. Holte and I did speak by Zoom to Todd Spence, who is one of the principals at this firm. And I also communicated with Itasca County, and they were over the moon about them. I mean, it was, and then I also communicated with Jackson County. Well, Itasca County was completed, and they were one of the successful referendums, and that's what materials are in their agenda. Jackson County is kind of like us. They are in the process of doing a referendum this fall as well. And I communicated with them, and they also, I mean, they just are working with them now. So, but they didn't have anything, you know, everything was good. So, and just as an aside, in Minnesota, you know, we are a really relatively small state in the sense that people know each other. And the principal who actually started this company was somebody I worked with at the Minnesota Public Utilities Commission. So he was a attorney, kind of lobbyist then. I think he's aged better than I have, but anyways, by his picture, I don't know if maybe, but you know, from what the work that he did then, if it's anything like he did then, I would have confidence in this too. And I think Ms. Holte and I won't speak for Ms. Holte, but I was impressed with Todd Spence, and he's done a lot of follow-up with us. And yes, this would be an education campaign. They would also help us write the referendum question because the boards ask us to come back for a third time on the question. And they wrote, in fact, what I wrote was similar to what Itasca had. That was one of the examples that I had looked at. So if they helped write Itasca's. And Itasca was building I think it was what, $78 million facility. So we're just asking for 28 million, right? So I would recommend it partly because as the speaker just spoke about staffing, we're down on staffing, particularly in my office, but also across. And this is something these folks do for a living. So, and I think we've seen referendums fail in the Lewiston School District, the Winona School District. And that's because frankly, I think they tried to do it on their own. And this is money well spent. We're talking about raising, the 28 million through a sales tax and not a property tax. And if it succeeds, then there's much less pressure on the property tax going forward for the next however many years it takes to raise $28 million. So.
Mr. Elson?
So it's hypothetically, I see $35,000 in the grand scheme of things. I realize that, maybe 28 million, we can cost reference that, but really it's subject to what do we get for 35,000? If we didn't start this conversation until, let's just say June, and we hired this firm in July, well, we take May and June and possibly even July, say we hired them in August and say, hey, you got 3 months to make this happen. Is there a need to start it right away? Can we?
We've already
do
delayed
that
it
or
for
not?
1 month. We've already delayed it for 1 month because it takes time to get it in front of you. And there is, Ms. Holte and I have talked about this. There's money available there for this. And again, the cost benefit of this to the community, I think, in terms of learning about this referendum, we're going to be in competition with, the presidential election and everything down the ballot there as well. And I think if people learn, if you looked at the materials that they put in there, the idea of what the economics of this is and how, it's really a sales tax that the tourists mostly.
Yeah, we understand that.
I'm sure you've read it.
What I'm saying is, what are we getting in the next 3 months that's worth 15,000 that we're not going to get in the last 3 months?
Well,
I'm just,
first we need to get that referendum question approved by July, or even before that. We need to
Right.
get that referendum question approved. So I would feel real comfortable if we could get it approved by the end of May or June, and they would help us do that. And I know Chelsea Wilbright would probably be really comfortable too, because she would be, getting that ballot printed. And then they could help us develop that education campaign. We've talked also, they wouldn't be doing everything, but Commissioner Meyer had a great idea in terms of our CJCC and our outreach committee having a fall education event for the community. And with the materials that this group could put together for us, we could work together with them. But they developed the website, they developed the social media, and I'll call it a campaign, but it's not really it has to be an educational effort. So, and that's what they do. And they've done a lot of these local option sales tax referendums, which yes, have very specific requirements for not having a advocacy bent, but an educational bent.
one more question. Is the sales tax all encompassing?
What does
No,
that mean?
Yeah, you were gonna check what,
On everything? No,
No.
it's whatever the state law is, not food.
No,
Right,
like-
but can we is it discretionary as to what we want it to be? Or is it just follow state statute? We were gonna, that question,
no, we were,
When we
sorry
created.
for asking, I'm just
Yeah,
looking
sure.
for clarification here. So
Yeah,
it was
so the
directed.
the legislation
So.
that we asked them to approve was very specific, that it's 0.25%. So not 25 cents on the dollar,
Yeah.
but 2.5 cents.
But is it like, but is
Well,
it luxury items? Is it like cars and
It's anything that you have a sales tax on.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But not clothes, not.
But I thought some things were exempt.
Automobiles are flat.
Automobiles are flat. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I'm alluding to. Automobiles, I think, are still flat.
Right.
So it's not all encompassing. So it follows the state statute, correct?
Right.
Right, and we have to work
Correct.
with the Department of Revenue to, if it's passed, then we have to work with the Department of Revenue, just like we did with the road tax.
So internally, we don't have any other measures as to what we regulate or choice. It's just we rubber stamp it, whatever the state law is, that's what it is.
Well, and we asked them to pass that state,
right.
Correct?
we wrote the state.
We don't
law.
have anything in our county that says, well, everything but this. or-
No, no,
Correct.
right.
It's,
It's applied to whatever.
Yeah.
applicable
I'm just-
Sales
I'm
taxes. Yeah,
making sure I
Yeah.
understand. So when I get questions,
sure, yep.
yep, whatever the state law
Yeah.
is, that's what we're
Yeah,
doing.
and ours is a lot less than Itasca's was if you looked at the stuff there, so. It was,
But
Commissioner Ward.
yeah, I know a little bit about the Itasca project because Brett Skiles sits on the MCIT
and
board.
he was
And
the one who
and-
was really enthusiastic.
yeah, he was gaga
Yeah.
goo goo over it. And that's Brett. That's Brett.
Well, and I
But
was Jackson
they're in
County
they're
attorney,
in
too,
a little
so.
different situation. They built courts and it's like a
what's happened in
70.
Houston.
Yeah, it's a $78 million thing. And he said they're big tourism.
Well, so are we
So,
though.
well, not near as much. Their percentage is
Did you see how
much
many cars
huge.
were parked along Sugarloaf for ice climbing? And we, have, I think we're.
Do we
we're
charge,
the number
do we
one-
charge sales tax on ice climbing?
No, we charge for what the hotels,
Yeah,
the
Well, let's get a permit and charge them.
restaurants.
So you talk about, okay, so you talk about a web page, social media and such like that, but I didn't see anything in here like, is there not everybody uses that stuff. I didn't see anything here for like a radio campaign,
I
a
mean, they would
newspaper
cover and-
campaign. Was it in here? I didn't
Well,
see it,
And I'm
or
sorry,
budget.
it's been a long day for me in court today, but I just want to,
That's okay.
they would, as the proposal said, they would design it for our community and have our input. And I think what might be a good idea is that, we have, if you give us the go-ahead, we'd have, Todd Spence either Zoom in and talk to the board and you can give the input of, and Winona County, right, is different than Itasca County. It's different than Jackson County.
Mhm.
But I think they're very cognizant of the county they're dealing with because they've done this work for years, not just for a local option sales tax, but they worked on the 35W bridge disaster. They worked on, what was the other one? So it's very wide ranging and so I think, again, they know, well, we know our community better than anybody, but they're very, I think, catering to the idea that they have to first find out what our community is about and then, work from there. So.
Ms. Holte and Commissioner Ward.
So, Commissioner Ward, on page 113 is where they list all of the different.
Yeah, it
type
says
of communication.
column newspaper article, $450, but that's just the article. That doesn't,
But up here,
doesn't-
under the scope, that's part of the 35,000 that was quoted. It states to develop mailers to send via the
right,
postal,
but that's not the postage and it's not the
social
running.
media, but also
ads.
newsletters, slide presentation for community meetings. I mean, there's a lot of different avenues. And again, the county can pick and choose what method of communication you want to do.
And with that picking and choosing, we can also maybe limit the budget.
We can have discussion with them. I mean, we didn't get into that depth because we wanted to have, as much of the concept of what's possible and bring it back for the board to talk about.
Well, and I guess right now I'm grappling with this whole concept of we're after the fact. We've already built the thing. It's already on the property taxes. We're already in discussions about building more. I mean, I don't know how they're going to overcome that. I mean, I don't even know
And
if
that's
I
why we
can,
need kind of.
I don't even know if I can support this concept anymore,
That's a
to tell
good
you the
fact.
truth. Well, it's just, I'm telling you what I'm thinking. I mean,
Well,
it's
and
going to be
Jackson County had the
difficult.
They're building theirs now too. So I mean, they're kind of in the same boat we are.
Who?
That Jackson County already started their building project before they went after the referendum. So,
And I think Itasca did theirs first.
but I believe so, but
Yeah,
they may
which,
have been in.
again, it should have been done.
Well,
How do we pay for it before we build it? But that, in
But-
hindsight, yeah.
yeah,
Mr. Olson.
yeah.
But is, there is a little bit, I guess I can understand what Commissioner Ward is saying. It's, just asking a few people their opinion on this switchover. And I think one of the things, obviously, with reading the paper is, I'm just gonna say it in the way as simple as I can. Oh, you want to switch it over to sales tax so you can fill the void and build another new LEC. That's what I've
I'm sorry,
gotten.
What did you say?
Oh, you want to
Another
switch it over to the sales tax so that you got room to tax us again to build an LEC.
Yeah,
And I have heard that countless times, time basically I've asked the question, hey, what do you think? And, just simply trying to get a little public opinion on it. Or people have come to me or, and said, hey, what's going on? So, I guess I can appreciate what Commissioner Ward said on that because it does lose a little bit of its lackluster if the public perception is you're just trying to free up more money to build more projects. And again, we work for our constituents, so it does raise caution to this whole scenario that, we think this is going to be a good thing, but the public perception is just now we're going to get taxed again. So it has changed the dynamics. I still think this would be a very good thing, but now what we're going to hear is, oh, you spent, not only did you switch it over there, but then you're trying to free up money to do this. And oh, by the way, you spent $50,000-$70,000, 35 to a firm and all this advertising cost to convince us of it to only go do that. So to me, in my brain, I have not come up with a way to overcome this to public perception. And the only way I think we can do it is if we stay true to ensuring that we don't turn around and start taking on more large projects and putting it right back onto our property taxes. I mean, it's difficult to overcome the public perception when that could be the very narrative that ends up happening. Ms. Mulvey.
So just to reiterate, we are the fourth lowest per capita taxing county in the state of Minnesota. I respect and hear what you're saying about taxing the citizens, but we are the fourth lowest. We are not overtaxing. If you look at it in the whole state, okay? I hear you. But the other part is what I've been hearing for some time is how do we educate the community? How do we get the word out? How do we get facts before the citizens? So if we don't have capacity, we need to have somebody help us. I mean, I hear you. I don't like spending that kind of money, and I was sticker shock when I first saw it, to be honest. But what are our options? If we say nothing, it's just going to brew in the community. So I think we need to do something.
Commissioner Olson.
I approached a group of Winona landlords, so they own a lot of property around this area. Of presenting to them, and it was very difficult for me to think of how I could not present without promoting. I want, and we can't,
Yeah.
so.
You can ask. That's what I do. I ask.
Right, so it would be
Who's gonna
great to,
challenge you? Is there
be
gonna
great to have a
spies
third
sitting
party
in the-
do that.
in the-
Um,
Who has the background
Right.
and who's done it for multiple years.
Right, so I
knows
could, yeah,
that
they,
Very, right.
I could get them on
It's
the
a fine
agenda.
line. Right.
No,
Commissioner Olson.
I'm not. My quandary here comes down to that this could be a multifaceted, kind of just a 1 through 3, 4 type scenario that could heavily backlash, at least in my district. And I could see that coming with, well, you've supported changing this, you supported spending the money to get it, only to turn around and go fill the void back up with another project. And so that's the issue. Can I see the value in this? Yeah, I think I can definitely see the value in it. I still question. I hired these firms in the past to do marketing for myself. I've hired at a substantial more cost, 10, 15 fold what this number is myself, not for my business, but for other companies. And been part of those conversations and tried to obtain the value as to what they are. And did it promote what it is? And it isn't 100% success rate. So again, there is that aspect of, yes, I agree, we need to figure out how to do this because as Commissioner Olson alluded to, that's why I've been asking, not promoting, what's your opinion? What's your feeling? Tell me what you think. And so that's why I have what I'm being told, which was, yeah, this sounds great. And then you're just gonna turn around and fill her back up. And that is hard to overcome that when you can't have a candid conversation. And the reality of it is are we on the projected path to actually do that, to fill the void back up with another new LEC? So it's a quandary for myself right now.
Commissioner Meyer.
You want to go?
I just, thank you. Part question. So this is meant to replace roughly a ballpark $28 million project, right?
Yep.
To shift it off of property tax onto sales tax. Yep. What we're looking for, and there's no decision been made in terms of remodeling, building new law enforcement center. What we were presented with at the last discussion, completely just a discussion, it would ask the county and then the city as well, but the county to pay, let's say, 4 to 5 million. Is that correct?
Correct.
So now there's a whole bunch of moving pieces and nothing's going to happen this year. Nothing will happen next year because, correct me if I'm wrong, a big part of that proposal that was presented to the county board and the city council was $13 million more from the state.
Yes.
So, and we don't know if that would happen at the earliest, that would happen next year. So my point is that worst case scenario, best case scenario is the local option sales tax referendum passes. And we shift, which we all want to do, get it off the property tax onto a sales tax, is that it wouldn't be another year or two before we looked at replacing it or adding on an additional cost. And that's only if state funding becomes possible, but it would also be a smaller amount. Now, the city of Winona would pay more for its half of the city police department, but in terms of, it would be a much smaller tag. Well, in terms of what the county taxpayers, is that a fair summary of where we're at?
Yes.
But again, we haven't decided what to do and how big to do it.
You're painting it very optimistically. And
Well, I'm just saying that we're not going to, worst case
all your
scenario.
figures are going down in dollar amount, and all I can see is how figures going up.
Well, what's going to happen is we're not going to ask the constituents to consider a local option sales tax and then the next month turn around and add on a new building. That's a longer discussion that will go all the way into next year. Et
And
cetera.
that's what I was implying.
Yes,
You know,
yep, yep.
whether it's not a month, it's coming.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
coming,
it's
but there will
coming,
be,
and so-
but regardless, if this were not to pass, their property tax stays the same. So to me, this seems like we should, not a no-brainer is the wrong term, but there are some very real concerns is that we should give it a try. I don't have a problem actually beginning sooner. My one small question is, it talks about 7 months at $5,000. The 7th month would take us into November. Would we need a full month's worth of, okay, because,
They,
and we
put
can work out,
together-
yeah, we could prorate it for a month, a week or whatever, because I want to save $5,000. Take November off or just take prorate.
Because you don't.
That's what I was
if they haven't
alluding to. Do we
accomplished
really
it by
need this
mid-
full front end, back end,
Yeah, I
whatever?
don't-
Is it necessary?
Yeah, I don't.
Is it necessary?
I just was-
Price.
November, but we could.
I picked penny cents, so.
Yeah. Commissioner Meyer and then Commissioner Ward.
So I came in here with the mindset that I was not going to approve this. And my thinking was that I have door knocked every door in my district. I have literally had hundreds of conversations about the jail. I feel pretty confident that people understood the need to build a jail. It was at the request of the chamber that we consider this as a property tax. And I sort of feel like, it is up to the voters to decide if they do or do not want it, because if they don't want it shifted to the sales tax, and I see how a shift to a sales tax has the potential to hurt businesses because consumers will come in the door and that is where they will be paying more for a product. And so is that a good thing? Maybe some businesses don't think that it is. So I sort of feel agnostic, like it's okay with me if the referendum doesn't pass. And frankly, I was okay with your wording of the referendum. And I feel like, God, 35,000 is a lot of money. Now, what I hear is that we probably need to do some education and that our staff can't handle that. And I heard what you said, which is that you feel like a third party can sort of make the statements that it was difficult for us to say things but not be promoting it. Okay. So I'm sort of convinced, maybe it's a good thing, but not for the full price. So if we can figure out a way to get it down, and I don't know how much that is, maybe, maybe, I don't, yeah.
Could I just say to that, I mean, okay, the math, it's less than 1%. It's 0.001 of the 28 million to 40,000.
I know.
So it's, I mean, again, compared to what the county's paid for other things, this is, I think, a huge.
I think about this, like, sometimes my husband wants to buy something and I go, if I had that money to spend, I'd buy this instead of that, right? And in this sort of a case, I'm like, what? Okay, I could buy how many reverse osmosis systems for residents of this county for what it costs to make that promotion? There are lots of things that our residents need that in my mind probably take higher priority than this piece of information, right? Because as I said, I think it's up to the will of the public if the referendum does or doesn't pass. It's okay with me if it doesn't pass. But if we could get the cost down and if the majority of the board wants to go that way, okay.
Commissioner Ward and Ms. Holte, did you? No.
Well, and I understand the need for professional documents and everything, but so what's the penalty if we talk to somebody and say, hey, I'm supporting this? What's the penalty?
Well, it's highly unenforceable, but
Exactly.
the lawyer response.
So they're gonna, no,
But again, I just reiterate the idea that, some entities in Winona County went into a referendum without a lot of, let's say, planning and strategy, and the referendums were defeated.
yeah.
And I guess to your point, Commissioner Meyer, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but this is really looking into the future and for the benefit of the citizens of Winona County. They won't be having to pay so much, one hopes, and that's up to you all to decide this, in property taxes if this passes, because there will be 1.3, 1.6. I mean, this is half of the road tax, and the road tax has been very successful in yeah.
Unlike the road tax, though,
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, once the jail is paid, then it sunsets.
It's done, right, and
It's-
the road tax, I
It could
think,
theoretically,
goes on
and
forever.
odds are it'll go.
Right.
And once you get all the roads fixed, it'll end too.
Well, no, that's different. This is specific targeted to the cost.
Correct.
This will
And
end.
once we
Yeah.
collect, yeah, it's done.
Potentially, good lord.
Yeah.
Would it be amenable to the board for Ms. Sonneman and I to go back and see what we can do to work out a reduced cost and maybe not have the full services, but the key aspects that we really need to have to be successful in communicating with the public? I really think it's very important that we have a positive, straightforward, factual communication, because depending on who the public talks with as to how are they going to be responded to and what information is going to be said and how. So if we have some key communication pieces that all of the commissioners, all of the applicable people can speak with, at least it's a consistent message.
Mhm.
And we're sticking to some boundaries.
But did they, again, there was a lot in here of what the others did. Do they act, so you're saying, like Commissioner Olson said, it's hard for us to, if we have this handful of fancy, shiny brochures that explain it, we can't set up our own meeting. They will communicate this to the public?
They would do that, yes. They'd have community meetings.
Which
Okay.
you can attend, and
Yes.
we could also, do something at the county fair.
So
My gosh.
Township officers or their landlords.
Right.
that's where I was
Yeah.
gonna check.
That's-
Are we,
well, we-
could we take something like this and I'm at a township meeting or municipality meeting, could I hand it out? Is that promoted?
Right, well, it's.
If I throw it on the table and
educating.
it's,
It's educating. So, and I
It
don't mean to be
depends how
flippant.
it's done.
Right.
Depends on who.
Put it on the table.
Who
and that-
turns you in? Who's your
Versus if I
spy?
hand one out.
I think we could ask the difference.
You know, That's the things that, that's a genuine question.
Right,
know.
but
And
perhaps we
it's-
can go
it's-
back and get clarification about what can we do? What options do we have?
Well, we should talk to the Itasca commissioners and see how they approached it. I mean, I can call some of them up and ask them, what did they do? Did they show up at community meetings or did they let
Well,
this
and
company do it?
Can I
all?
speak to that point too,
Sure.
Commissioner Ward?
Well, Brett Skiles could, right? So Maureen, you're on the campaign trail.
Well, and if you noticed in the brochure or in the agenda item, it talked about how important it was for the leaders of the community, meaning the county board, the sheriff, myself, the elected officials who are, involved with the jail, to be giving this factual information and that the citizens can trust that that information is correct, because things, sometimes facts can be twisted, but this is pretty straightforward in terms of what it'll pay for. This is going to cover
Well, it
the
would have
cost
been
of the
nice to
jail.
have a line item on the taxes saying this is what you're paying for Winona County Jail, but that obviously didn't happen. Or they said they couldn't make it happen, which I find
Commissioner
strange.
Olson.
Well,
So just, what do you need tonight? Do you need a dollar amount or do you just need,
Negotiate.
I would support this. I don't want to be
No.
penny wise and pound foolish. I think it is beneficial, I believe. To have somebody not promote it, to educate the public. See, I'm guilty. To somebody to give a consistent message, to different organizations and leadership throughout the county. So I would make a motion to support, but I need a number. What can we do?
And maybe bringing back a proposed contract with numbers. I
With
mean,
two
I
or
think
three
that's what we're-
options,
Which
two or
will be
three
into the
options,
next, another month, so we'll have to get
Probably
another
May.
proration.
That was my very first comment is it necessary to do this? Yeah, right.
Start in June. Start in June.
Well, I mean, I think the earlier you start,
The earlier, sometimes the earlier you start it, the message
it's
gets,
like pre-K, Commissioner Ward, you gotta start them early.
the message gets diluted though and weak. And you got to remember, we're working on a presidential election year. Everything that we do is going to be at the bottom of the tier, unfortunately. I mean,
Although I think some of the local issues, will take precedent too. I mean, we've got, what's the saying? Politics is local. So-
All politics.
Yeah, thank you. All politics is local. And this is not political. This is education.
Motion to table it, or you bring it back?
No, just-
We need a motion for direction to come back with a proposed contract.
Now-
So moved.
Yeah.
I'll
And with
second
that
it.
contract, though, you need to guesstimate what it's gonna cost to run newspaper ads or radio ads or something too, because that's gonna
Be
be
a large
significant too.
Just write a letter to
Also
the editor.
to make sure that we look at multiple locations and that scope, the entire county.
Yep, like you said, if it's visiting with St. Charles City Council, Goodview City Council, township officers.
Papers, there's lots of
Exactly.
papers outside of Winona, the Post goes everywhere, the, St. Charles Press, the Lewiston Journal, things like that.
So there's a motion on the table to ask administration to bring back a contract at the May 4th agenda. Is that
14,
on May 14th? Sorry, thank you.
bring back options,
Bring back options, maybe two or three options.
including cost.
including
Yes.
costs. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? I'm sorry.
Who second?
I'm sorry. Commissioner Olson moved, Commissioner Meyer
Oh,
seconded.
I'm sorry.
Sorry,
Thank
my
you.
fault. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. That takes us back to comments. Commissioner Ward.
Just real quick, Winona County Fair is just around the corner, of course, July 19th to the 14th, but I think you're all familiar with the Hall of Fame. If you know somebody that's been an outstanding contributor to the community, and they pick, people to be the day of the fair, applications are due by this weekend, and Cindy Tim is the contact to get that information too, so keep that in mind.
Maybe I misheard. I think it said July 19th to the 14th, July 10th.
Oh, 9th through the 14th.
9th through the
I'm
14th,
sorry. Yeah, July, actually the 10th. I think the
Yep,
9th is. open.
10th through the 14th.
10th through the 14th.
Anything else?
No, thank you.
I just want to add, after the last meeting, Commissioner Elsie and I had a great conversation. And I look forward to more discussions about water issues. I think that there's going to be some differences, but also a lot of common ground on these issues as well. And I think that everyone wants to find solutions and actions that we can start moving on. So thank you for the time afterwards.
Thank you.
It was a good discussion, definitely differences, but also a ton of common ground as well. I think that's it then, correct? All right, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Motion by Commissioner Olson, seconded by Commissioner Elsing, to adjourn the meeting. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting is adjourned. Maureen, before I forget, this was,
I think
this
part
was
of
up
the
here.
problem with that email from Shannon Peasley, for some reason, yes, but she